There once was a boy who yelled into the void, "I want to make games." And the void responded, "Okay, go for it." So here I am, just a boy, yelling into the void. And if you're hearing this, thanks for listening to the void. So I'm making a game by myself for now. The concept is a first-person shooter, but instead of guns, there are cards. Instead of firing bullets or portals, you can cast your cards like an action in Hearthstone or something. Each of the cards will have a cost, summon enemies, summon a weapon, or whatever I decide in the future. You gain the cards in a TCG fashion, with different packs to collect and cards to open up, with some being rarer than others. The concept also involves some gameception. There will be the in-game environment with combat and exploration as the main majority of the gameplay. But that game is actually an arcade game inside the real world. The real world is an arcade where you take the tickets you gain from the game to the counter and buy stuff and trade or whatever else an arcade entails. When you get the cards from the real world environment, you'll scan them in to the game. As far as the setting of the game goes, the arcade will be typical arcadey stuff, the big cabinets, the dingy pizza, and the clinically depressed employees. As far as inside the game, I'm thinking a cyberpunk kind of Egyptian vibe. I think it'll look cool. I started out by making a game design document. I thought this would be a good idea to keep my stuff organized, and anyway, someone on the internet told me to do it, so it must be important. I decided the art direction, some of the design pillars, and a bunch of other stuff I'm sure will be useful, eventually. As far as the art direction goes, I kind of wanted to do something like a short hike, with a toon-shaded and chunky pixel art style. I did this in Unity by using a render texture to scale down the image. From there I added a player controller that I definitely didn't steal from a Brackeys tutorial. And we got something up and running that kinda looked good. I may end up dropping the low-res filter and toon shading later, but we'll have to decide. If you have any thoughts, feel free to shout them down below. I'll be using scriptable objects to hold all the data for the cards, so I went ahead and made a card scriptable object. I then set up the user interface, knowing I'll have to change it later, and also made a scriptable object for the cards in the current player's hand. From there I mapped the current hand of cards onto the UI and made it scrollable, so now we can see what cards are in the hand. About then is when I realized this isn't a game jam and I probably need to be thinking more long term. So I went ahead and made a game specification doc where I kinda outlined some of the classes and features and specifications for the character and the game as a whole. One of the things I came up with was a game manager, in which all other systems would interact through the game manager and not with each other. This will hopefully prevent a bunch of script dependency issues and keep it clean and concise. I also added a mana bar, or as we're calling it, Heka, the Egyptian word for magic. I also added a life bar too, but that doesn't do anything for now. I went ahead in Blender and made some placeholder models. I made one for a papyrus plant, a pyramid, and a spear. UV mapping is hard, but I eventually figured it out. Dropping those back into the game, I was semi-pleased with the result. I now needed to make it so when you casted a card, it actually did something. I made a card player script that'll hold all of the different actions for each card based on its card ID. I then set up a prototype for summoning a spear just as a test for getting all the systems working together. So here's the finished product of this first devlog. We can run around and we can cast cards and it will decrease the amount of mana we have. There are still some issues to be solved, obviously. The toon shader still doesn't receive shadows, so I'll have to figure that out. And I also have the issue of the spear rotating based on the player's rotation, and not just being always in the same place. I'll also have to figure out how to make these videos better and not be self-conscious about every time I'm speaking into this stupid microphone. As far as the overarching plans for the game, I'd like to target a release in 2021 because I know no matter how hard I work on it, it's still my first game, and it'll probably end up mediocre at best. As far as devlogs go, I'd like to release one every couple of weeks, but that'll probably be based on the response to this video. Overall, do I think this game will be profitable? Absolutely not. I'm doing this because I like making games, and it'll be fun to look back on maybe. I hope you enjoyed seeing all of this compiled into a video. At the time of recording, I have a whopping 0 subscribers, so if you'd like to see more of this journey, maybe consider subscribing. I don't know. It's your life. If you have any feedback or thoughts about the game, feel free to comment. Next time I hope to add more cards, maybe some enemies, and improve the movement system. I hope you enjoyed watching, and until next time, make sure to get your vitamin C. I'm not kidding.